When I begged my husband for money to save our 3-year-old daughter, he looked at me and coldly said, "I don't have room for sick people in my life." Then, he kicked us out and brought his new girlfriend into the house. I stood outside crying, holding my daughter as he slammed the door on us. What he didn't know was that his betrayal sparked a plan for revenge inside me. By the time he woke up the next day, his life was already falling apart. One evening, after Sophia's birthday, Adam told me he had a big business trip coming up. He kissed me and said he'd be gone for a few days. It wasn't unusual, his work often took him out of town. I didn't mind, trusting him completely. I believed his work was what kept us secure. But things changed a few days later when Sophia got sick. She caught a cold, which didn't seem serious at first, but her fever got worse. By the second day, she was burning up and couldn't keep her eyes open. I was scared. I called Adam, hoping he'd come home to help. When he answered, I could barely speak because I was so worried. "Adam, Sophia's really sick. Her fever is high, and I don't know what to do." His response still haunts me. "I'm about to board a plane, Dorothy. You'll have to handle it. She's probably fine. Just give her some medicine." "Adam, it's serious," I begged. "She needs a doctor." "Dorothy," he said coldly, "I'm not canceling a business trip for a little fever. You're her mother. Handle it." He hung up, leaving me in shock with a child who needed help. But Sophia didn't have time for me to process my pain. I rushed her to the hospital, praying the whole way. The emergency room was chaotic, but I begged for help. When Dr. Wilson finally saw her, he became very serious. He told me that the fever had caused brain problems. "She needs surgery right away," he said. "It's the only way to save her." My heart sank. "Surgery? How much will it cost?" I asked, trembling. Dr. Wilson hesitated. "You need to pay a $155,000 deposit for us to continue." $155,000. I didn't have that kind of money, and Adam wasn't answering my calls. I texted him, left voicemails, and sent messages. He saw them but didn't reply. My husband, the man who claimed to love us, was ignoring us when we needed him most. I sat in the hospital, holding Sophia's weak hand, crying. I didn't know what to do. Then I realized, I had no choice. I ran home, grabbed my jewelry, and sold everything I could, my wedding ring, family heirlooms, everything. It wasn't enough, but I begged the jeweler to help. Miraculously, he agreed. I paid the deposit, and they rushed Sophia into surgery. Hours felt like days as I waited, praying for her to survive. When Dr. Wilson finally came out, he gave me a small smile. "The surgery was successful. She's going to be okay." Relief flooded over me, and I thanked the doctor and his team for saving my daughter. Sophia was alive, and that was all that mattered. But even in my relief, I couldn't stop wondering, where was Adam? Why hadn't he cared enough to help? My heart was breaking, and I didn't know it then. But this was the beginning of the end. My perfect life was falling apart. I didn't know what awaited me when we got home. After we left the hospital, I was exhausted. All I wanted was to put Sophia to bed and rest. But when I pulled into the driveway, I saw Adam's car. My heart lifted for a moment. Maybe he was here to apologize, to explain. Maybe I'd misunderstood his silence. Carrying Sophia, I went to the door. The lights were on, and I heard voices inside. Something didn't feel right, but I couldn't figure it out. When I opened the door, what I saw shocked me. Adam was in the living room with a young woman I didn't recognize. She was tall, with perfect hair and a smug smile that made me sick. They were too close to each other, laughing together. Sophia whimpered in my arms, sensing the tension. "Adam," I said, my voice shaking. "Who is this?" He looked at me, calm and distant, almost like he didn't care. "This is Chloe," he said casually, like introducing an old friend. "We're together now." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Together? What does that even mean? "Adam," I shouted, my voice growing louder, "what do you mean? I just came back from the hospital with our daughter. Do you even care what she's been through? What I've been through?" His words cut through me like a knife. "Dorothy," he said coldly, "I've made my choice. You and Sophia can handle things on your own from now on. I don't need sick people holding me back." I just stood there, stunned. Was this really the man I had built my life with? The father of my child? I felt dizzy as his words hit me. "You're leaving us?" I whispered. Chloe stepped forward, smiling with fake sweetness. "It's not personal," she said, almost too cheerfully. "Adam and I share something you don't understand." I couldn't take it anymore. "How dare you?" I yelled, my anger finally bursting through the shock. "I've been keeping this family together while you've been off with your new girlfriend. Do you even know what I did to save our daughter's life? I sold everything, my wedding ring, my mother's necklace, all because you didn't care enough to answer your phone." Adam just shrugged, looking bored. "That's your problem, Dorothy. Not mine." Before I could respond, he walked to the door, opened it, and said, "You need to leave. I've already packed your things. They're outside." I couldn't believe this was happening. "You're kicking us out?" I asked, my voice cracking. Where are we supposed to go, Adam? This is Sophia's home. It's my house, he said, coldly and firmly. You'll figure it out. Chloe leaned against the doorframe with a smug look. Good luck, Dorothy, she said, faking sympathy. I looked down at Sophia in my arms, her little body warm against mine, and somehow that gave me the strength to keep my head up. You'll regret this, Adam, I said, my voice calm even though I was crying. You're a coward and a liar, and I'll make sure everyone knows it. He didn't even react. Do what you need to do, he said, slamming the door behind me. Standing outside in the cold, I felt a mix of anger and sadness. I looked at Sophia's innocent face, not knowing what had just happened. It's going to be okay, I whispered, mostly to myself. We'll get through this, I promise. With nowhere else to go, I called Grace, my best friend. She picked up right away, her voice filled with concern. Dorothy, what's wrong? I told her everything, the hospital, the surgery, Adam's betrayal, and how he had thrown us out. Grace didn't hesitate. Come to me, she said firmly. I'll meet you at the shelter. You're not alone in this. When I arrived at the women's shelter where Grace worked, she gave me a tight hug. You're safe now, she whispered. We'll figure this out together. Over the next few days, I opened up to Grace about everything, Adam's coldness, his betrayal, and how he had chosen Chloe over his family. Grace listened quietly, her face showing both anger and sadness. Dorothy, she said one evening, there's something more going on here. Adam doesn't just leave his family like this without a reason. Something doesn't add up. What do you mean? I asked, though deep down, I suspected she was right. Grace leaned forward, her expression serious. I think Adam's hiding something, and I know someone who can help us figure it out. That's how I met Ethan, a private investigator Grace trusted. He was in his early 40s, with sharp eyes that made me feel like he could see right through me. I'll look into Adam's life, he said. If there's anything to find, I'll find it. I didn't know what to expect, but I knew one thing for sure, I needed answers. Adam had shattered my world, and I wasn't going to let him get away with it. While I waited for Ethan's findings, I focused on Sophia, who was slowly recovering. Her giggles were quieter now, and her energy was down, but she was alive, and that was all that mattered. Still, the anger in my chest wouldn't fade. Adam had betrayed us, and I wasn't going to let him escape without facing the consequences. A week later, I sat in Grace's small office at the shelter, anxiously waiting for Ethan to bring me the answers I needed. My mind raced with questions. What could Adam be hiding? Was this betrayal just the beginning of something much worse? Sophia was playing quietly in the corner, her soft giggles a small comfort. When Ethan finally walked in, his face was serious, and the folder he carried under his arm made my heart race. I knew he had found something big. Dorothy, he began, setting the folder on the desk. You need to brace yourself. What I found isn't just about an affair, it's much worse. My stomach dropped. Grace reached over and squeezed my hand, her way of letting me know she was there for me. Tell me, I said, my voice calm despite the storm inside me. Ethan opened the folder, revealing photos, documents, and transaction records. Adam and Chloe aren't just having an affair, he explained. They're business partners, illegal business partners. They've been running fraudulent schemes, laundering money, and even funneling funds into offshore accounts. I stared at him, unable to believe what I was hearing. You're telling me Adam's a criminal? Ethan nodded. He's been doing this for years. He's been using his legitimate business as a front. Chloe isn't just his mistress, she's his accomplice. Together, they've built a web of lies and illegal activities. The room seemed to spin. This was the man I had trusted, the father of my child. I had suspected betrayal, but never imagined it could go this far. How do you know all of this? I asked, trying to process it all. Ethan pointed to the documents. I traced his financial transactions, interviewed former employees, and dug into public records. Everything points to them being involved in criminal activities. They've even managed to stay under the radar of federal authorities. Grace leaned forward, her voice firm. Dorothy, this changes everything. Adam's not just a cheater, he's a criminal. You need to protect yourself and Sophia. We have to take this to the authorities. I nodded, anger rising within me. Adam had destroyed our family and abandoned his child, and now I learned he had been living a double life as a criminal. What do we do now? I asked, determined to fight back. Grace and Ethan exchanged a look before Ethan spoke. We start by building a case. The evidence I've gathered is solid, but we'll need more to ensure Adam and Chloe face justice. You'll need a lawyer, someone good. Grace didn't hesitate. I know someone who can help. Let me make a call. That's how I met Megan, a lawyer who specialized in cases like mine. She was in her early 40s, with a calm confidence that immediately put me at ease. Dorothy, she said during our first meeting, you've been through hell, but we're going to turn this around. With the evidence Ethan has gathered, We can not only expose Adam's crimes but also make sure you and Sophia get what you deserve. Over the next few days, Megan and Ethan worked tirelessly to strengthen the case. Megan filed for an emergency order to protect me and Sophia, while Ethan coordinated with local authorities to expose Adam's illegal activities. For the first time since Adam had kicked us out, I felt a flicker of hope. The turning point came when Ethan helped orchestrate a raid on one of Adam's business properties. With law enforcement's help, they caught Adam and Chloe red-handed, finalizing a fraudulent deal. The arrest was quick, and the news spread fast. Watching footage of Adam being led away in handcuffs was surreal. This man, who had once been everything to me, now looked like a stranger. When Megan called to tell me the charges against Adam and Chloe were solid, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness, relief that justice was finally catching up to them, but sadness for the life Sophia and I had lost. Still, I knew we couldn't move forward until this chapter was closed. The court date had arrived, and Megan had assured me that our case was strong. "Dorothy," she said, "you'll have to testify. The court needs to hear your story, the sacrifices you've made, the betrayal you've endured. Are you ready for that?" I hesitated. The thought of standing before a judge and strangers was overwhelming, but when I glanced at Sophia, who was happily playing in the corner, her laughter filled me with resolve. This was for her, for our future. "Yes," I said, my voice steady despite the fear. "I'm ready." As the trial day neared, I prepared myself for what lay ahead. Adam had tried to break me, tried to tear apart our family, but I wasn't going to let him succeed. With Grace, Megan, and Ethan by my side, I felt strong. Together, we would fight for justice, for the life Sophia and I deserved. The day of the trial arrived. Standing outside the courthouse, I held Sophia's hand tightly. Her innocent eyes looked up at me, filled with trust. She didn't know the weight of what was happening, but I did it all for her. Grace and Megan stood beside me, unwavering in their support. Ethan arrived moments later, his calm confidence a reassuring presence. "We've got this, Dorothy," he said quietly. "The evidence is solid." As we entered the courtroom, my heart raced. The high ceiling, the imposing judge's bench, the rows of seats, all of it felt so daunting. Across the room, Adam and Chloe sat with their lawyers, their eyes cold and unbothered. When Adam caught my gaze, he smirked, as if this was all just a game. I bit my lip, focusing instead on Sophia, who was sitting safely with Grace in the gallery. The trial began with the opening statements. Megan's voice was strong and clear as she laid out the case: Adam's betrayal, his illegal activities, and his abandonment of his family. Hearing her speak, I felt a surge of pride. This wasn't just my fight anymore, it was the truth that needed to be revealed. When it was my turn to testify, my legs felt shaky as I made my way to the witness stand. I swore to tell the truth, then began recounting everything. I described Sophia's illness, the pain of watching her suffer, and how Adam had ignored my desperate calls for help. I talked about selling my jewelry to pay for Sophia's surgery, only to return home and find Adam with Chloe, deciding to throw us out in the cold. My voice trembled, but I held it together, looking at Sophia's smiling face in the gallery as my anchor. Adam's defense tried to paint him as a misunderstood businessman, claiming that I had overreacted and that his relationship with Chloe was a private matter, but Megan was relentless. She tore apart their arguments, presenting the evidence of Adam's fraudulent schemes, evidence that Ethan had worked tirelessly to uncover. Megan's questions were pointed. "Mr. Johnson, why did you ignore your wife's pleas for help when your daughter was critically ill?" Adam shifted uncomfortably. "I was busy," he muttered. "Busy with Chloe, perhaps?" Megan pressed, holding up evidence of Adam's luxury resort stay during Sophia's surgery. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs, and Adam's face turned crimson. Chloe's testimony only sealed their fate. Under pressure, she admitted her involvement in the fraudulent activities and implicated Adam further. By the end of the trial, their entire web of lies had unraveled. Judge Walker, stern and meticulous, took her time reviewing the evidence. When she spoke, her voice was firm. "This court finds Adam Johnson and Chloe Reed guilty of multiple counts of fraud and money laundering. Their actions were not only illegal but reprehensible, showing blatant disregard for family and the law." She turned to me then, her tone softer. "Mrs. Johnson, your courage in coming forward is commendable. This court awards you full custody of Sophia and all legal assets belonging to Mr. Johnson, excluding those tied to his crimes." Tears filled my eyes. Adam and Chloe were sentenced to long prison terms. Justice had been served, and the weight of betrayal finally began to lift from my shoulders. Outside the courthouse, Grace wrapped me in a tight hug. "You did it, Dorothy. You stood up for Sophia and yourself." Ethan, his normally serious demeanor softened, said with pride, "You earned this victory." As we drove back to the shelter, a sense of peace began to wash over me. Sophia slept soundly in her car seat, her tiny hand clutching mine. I was free from Adam's control, free from the lies. Grace looked over at me. "What's next for you?" I smiled, my heart full of determination, a fresh start, a home for Sophia and me, where we can be safe and happy. In the weeks that followed, small victories brought me new hope. Grace helped me find a modest apartment in a quiet neighborhood. Megan guided me in managing the assets, ensuring that Sophia and I had financial security. I began volunteering at the shelter, giving back to the place that had been my refuge. One evening, as I tucked Sophia into bed, she looked up at me and asked softly, "Mommy, are we happy now?" I stroked her hair gently, my heart swelling with love. "Yes, sweetheart, we're happy and safe. This is just the beginning of a beautiful life." That night, sitting in our little living room, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here, the betrayal, the heartbreak, and the fight for justice. It had all led to this moment. I wasn't the same woman I had been. I was stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. I looked forward to giving Sophia the life she deserved, knowing we had overcome so much together. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly free.